So please give a warm hanaho to Maya Men Jung.
Aloha, everybody. I'm going to turn around and say hi to you. Hello, everybody. All right. So let's go back to, So I want to tell you a story that happened to me a few years ago. I was delivering a leadership program for a multinational telecommunications company. And this is the first day of the program. And I typically are quite interactive. So at about half an hour into the program, that I asked the question to the group. I wanted to hear their perspective. So the participants were senior executives from this company, and they came from about 10 different countries. So it's very diverse culturally. And so when I throw this question out, one of the executives from Korea raised his hand. And I said, yes, please, I'd love to hear your thoughts. And Mr. Kim, English is not his first language, so he spoke slowly but very thoughtfully, and to kind of share his ideas and thoughts. So he spoke for a few minutes, and then he stopped. So I thanked him, and then I move on to the next topic. Right, so, and the first break of the program, it's around 10 o'clock, and the HR person came up to me, very, very concerned look on her face, and very nervous. She said, Maya, she pulled me aside and said, I need to talk to you, I have a problem. I say, okay, what's wrong? Is everything okay? And she say, Mr. Kim, she talked earlier, he's very upset with you. Okay, he's gonna leave. He's packing up. He's gonna leave. He was angry. I was like, what? I was really surprised. I said, what happened? What happened to him? And this HR person said, well, he said that you were rude to him. You cut him off. He didn't finish, and you cut him off. And he thought it was rude and disrespectful. So he's packing up. He's not going to come back. He's going to leave the class. Oh my goodness. So I took a deep breath. Okay, and I walked back to the classroom. And I took a look for sure. Yeah, sure enough, he was packing up and ready to leave the class. So I approached him cautiously and said, Mr. Kim, may I speak to you for a few minutes, please? And then he looked up to me and said, okay. So then we walk outside to the hallway, and when there's nobody around, and I said, Mr. Kim, I heard that you were upset, so please tell me what happened. Okay? And Mr. Kim said, well, I was talking, and I didn't finish. You cut me off. Okay, you're teaching leadership and communication, but that was disrespectful. Okay, this is a waste of my time. I'm leaving. His face was red. He was angry. He was I could tell he was really upset about the situation. And I listened, and I said, Mr. Kim, thank you for your feedback. Please accept my sincere apology. I really didn't mean to cut you off. In fact, I thought that you have completed your comment. That was all my fault. I'm so sorry. Well, I would really like to hear your thoughts and have you stay in the class and to continue to learn with all of us and share your thoughts and your comments. Would you give me another chance to come back and please stay in the class? I would really appreciate it. Well, he took a deep breath. He looks a little bit more relaxed. He said, okay. So we walked back to the class, right? And for the rest of the class, I invite him to speak. I really bite my tongue. I did not interrupt him again for the rest of the class. And he became more and more comfortable and became a very active contributor to the class. Throughout the day, he stayed. And at the end of the day, when he gave the evaluation, he actually gave a 5 out of 5. Okay. So I want to hear from you. Like, what do you think? What's the takeaway of the story, right? I was the receiver of a very critical negative feedback with somebody who is emotionally charged, clearly upset. Okay. What was the takeaway? Please, put your thoughts in the chat box. Okay. What's the takeaway of the situation? What happened, and what worked? Okay. So I'd love to hear from you. So Bernard is actually monitoring the comments, the chat box. So please feel free to jump in anytime, and if we receive any comments.
All right, we got a couple coming in so far. So you acknowledged his frustration and asked for forgiveness to move forward.
Yep.
You diffused the situation with humility. And there was some active listening going on there. You took responsibility for the situation and apologized. Again, acknowledging and apologizing for a mistake and asking for a second chance. You valued the relationship over your own ego. Show of empathy, breathe. Empathy that he felt he lost face. So a lot to do with empathy and understanding and acknowledgement, and then asking for that second chance.
Thank you, absolutely. And when I thought back of the situation, right, I only had literally like less than a minute to react before he walked out the door. So everything you said was valid, absolutely true, right? The first thing that came to my mind is that this is not about me. This is about him. This is about the client. And obviously that I had a blind spot. I didn't realize that the impact of my behavior, even though it was not my intention, but actually had a negative impact on him. So put down my ego aside and really listen to him and understand where he's coming from and apologize. And it's very vulnerable for instructor to actually show that, but I think it's something that really resonated with him. And thinking back, I still feel my face is turning red, right? It's a very difficult situation. And, earlier we talked about it is very challenging to give negative feedback. But it's just equally difficult to receive negative feedback, right? And so those are all part of a tough conversation that we are going to have, or we're experiencing all the time. And as HR leaders and professionals, how do we manage those situations? And how can we ensure that we can save face for everybody involved? In fact, one of my clients once asked me this question and say, well, Maya, in this situation, you lost face too, so how are you going to protect yourself, right? And it's really about look at the long term, the long game, is that how do we make it a win-win, right? And showing humility, empathy, and also emotional intelligence really is the key. So take a deep breath, that always helps. So now for this session today, I would like to share with you 3 different common approaches to tough conversations, okay? And also learn some practical actionable steps so that we can preserve dignity and build trust while having tough conversations with people. Okay, so it's going to be a very interactive, and also I'm going to ask you to just get ready, okay? Because you're going to roll up your sleeve and then do some work and practice and experience it yourself. So what are some of the 3 common approaches to tough conversations? First one, straight talk. Now I mentioned this in the earlier session here. The straight talk is that you say what needs to be said to the right person at the right time, at the right place. Respectfully, clearly, and accurately. Okay, so every word in this definition is important. You wanted to make sure you give feedback to the right person. You don't want to talk behind their back or talk around him or her, right? Talk to the right person. That also you want to make sure that this is the right time. If they're busy, if they're distracted, if they're stressed out, make sure that you ask permission to talk to them at the right time, and so that they can have, give you undivided attention. And also, is this the right place, right? And if you are, you're giving the feedback and in front of everybody else, well, think about this, right? Maybe we need to wait until we actually have a chance to talk in private, one-on-one. Now, 3 things. You want to do it, make sure that your message is clear. And number 2 is that it's accurate. Okay? You don't want to exaggerate, and also you might want to make sure you have all the facts straight. And then the 3rd point is that you have to demonstrate respect. So say what's needs to be said to the right person at the right time in the right place, respectfully, accurately, and clearly. Okay, so that's straight talk. The second approach is called blunt talk. So blunt talk is that you say what you want to say, but you don't actually pay attention, or you don't even care about, is this the right person I'm talking to? Is this the right place, right time? And is my message clear? Is it accurate? Is it based on the facts? And also, most importantly, is it respectful? Okay, now respect is actually based on how the other person interprets respect. It's not how you feel, right? So the platinum rule, remember that, is how treat others as they would like to be treated. So if you think it's respectful, but if the other person doesn't feel they're being respected, that's not going to work. So blunt talk is that you basically say what you want to say. You don't consider all the other factors. And you want to just basically get things off your chest. Also, get back at that person. Usually when you do the blunt talk, that your own emotion can be quite negative or frustrated. Now, the 3rd approach is called safe talk. So safe talk is that you kind of drop the hint about what you need to say. Okay? You don't actually directly talk about the issue, and you dance around the issue, and you're hoping that the other person is going to actually get your message. Okay? So when you give safe talk, that people may walk away not really understanding what you're trying to say. They could be, look at this picture, right? They can be a little confused about, is my boss or this person trying to tell me something? Or what is it? Or sometimes they may actually walk away not knowing or not realizing anything was wrong, or they need to do something to fix it. Okay, so those are 3 different approaches. Now, what is the impact of each approach? Okay, so when you think about the straight talk, typically, the delivery of the person tend to be calm, and they're more rational and respectful and empathetic. Okay, so then the result is that you can build better understanding, and also the other person will have a better understanding of your expectations. And then so they also have a better understanding of the next steps in order to fix the issue. Okay, that's straight talk, that's the impact. Now, what happened to the blunt talk? The person tends to be more direct, confrontational, and lack of tact or empathy. And then when someone is being given this blunt talk, the natural tendency is that they get angry or defensive, and they stop listening, and sometimes they even just resist of whatever you try to tell them. They shut down. Okay? And then the 3rd approach, safe talk. Safe talk is on the other side of the spectrum. It's the opposite of blunt talk. So when you do the safe talk, tend to be more indirect, very careful, okay? Not to hurt the other person's feeling, or you wanted to actually make yourself more comfortable. So you dance around the issue, you beat around the bush. And so when you sprinkle those hints or drop those hints, that a lot of times the other person just simply unaware what's going on. Or sometimes they think there's something wrong, but it's not clear about what you expect them to do. Okay, so now sometimes they may not even be able to take any actions. Let's talk about those 3 approaches, but I would like to start with the safe talk. So when leaders use safe talk to communicate with others, a lot of times that they can be intentional or unintentional. Okay? And so when they're giving safe talk, a lot of time what's going through their mind is that I don't want to hurt the other person's feeling. Okay? And I don't want to upset them, or potentially you think that there's going to be some negative reactions to it. So that the leader wanted to kind of soften up the message. Okay? And they also, so when they use the safe talk, a lot of times that they are really not just protecting the other person, sometimes it's about protecting themselves. Okay? And this is according to one of my favorite authors, Brene Brown. She was talking about being clear in our communication. Okay? And she said that clear is kind. Unclear is unkind. When we're not clear with our message, that people don't understand our expectations, and they don't actually know how to take actions based on this conversation. And then later on, if we hold them accountable for not delivering the results, that's being unfair to the other person either. Right? So when we think about being clear with delivering our message, that always keep that in mind. We may think that unclear is being kind to the other person, but it's actually unkind and unfair. Okay. Now, sometimes research also show that we can actually sugarcoat our message unintentionally. So what happened there? Now, when we deliver safe talks, that there is a cognitive bias. It's called illusion of transparency. So what that means is that when we're going to deliver bad news, whether it's a negative feedback or something that you anticipate the other person is not going to like the message, that we're so focused on our own intense feelings, whether it's anxiety or nervousness about how we're going to deliver this message. And our attention was so focusing on this intense emotion that we overestimate the clarity of our message. So sometimes the message is very vague. And then so the employee can walk away really not knowing what you're trying to tell them. Okay? And so that is the illusion of transparency. And leaders sometimes are doing this, so we don't even know we're doing it. And then in fact, in our mind, that we thought we're being fairly transparent and we're very clear. But the receiver really doesn't feel that way. Now, let's talk about, obviously that doesn't work, right? So let's talk about the straight talk. Okay, so straight talk is something that clearly we want to aim for. So in order to be effective in straight talk, one of the key skills to have is to listen. Now, when you listen, you're not just listening to what they're saying. And you want to listen to three things. Okay, you want to listen to facts, you want to listen to feelings, and also listen to values. The best way to persuade others is really with your ears by listening. Because when people feel they're being heard, the resistance goes down, and they're more open to have a conversation with you and have productive results. So let's practice listening. Okay, this is something that we don't always practice in our day-to-day conversation, but this is something that I think we can all benefit from, is to listen to three different things. So we're going to do a breakout room activity, and let's practice listening to three things. Now, so we're going to put you in a breakout room. We're going to have probably 5, 6 people in each breakout room. And we have 5 different roles. So person A, you're going to be the speaker. Okay? And then person B is going to listen for the facts. Or C is going to listen for feelings. And D is going to listen for values. Okay? And then E is going to be the facilitator and the timekeeper. So I'm going to pause for a second, and then please take out your phone and just take a picture of this screenshot. And I'm going to give you some specific instructions. So go ahead and take a picture of this. All right, and then let's go to the next slide here. Now, so we have 10 minutes to do this practice. The first step is that once you get into your breakout room, again, assign roles, who is going to be A, B, C, D, E. And A, you're going to share something you're proud of, something that you're really proud of happening recently or in your lifetime. Okay, and you have 2 minutes to share your story. And then B, C, and D, I would like you to really listen. So B, again, you're going to listen to the facts. C is going to listen to the feeling, and D, you're going to listen for the values. Okay, and then you're going to listen and then take some notes. And then E, please keep time. So when 2 minutes is up, go ahead and just stop and then move on to the second step. Now the second step is that B, you're going to summarize the facts based on what you heard. And take about a minute to do that. And C, you're going to summarize the feelings. And then D, you're going to summarize the values. Okay? And then we're going to come back to A, the speaker. And A, you're going to share, did I feel like being heard? And how? Okay, so then we're going to have E facilitate the discussion to reflect on this experience, this listening exercise. So those are some of the questions. What mode of listening was the easiest? Okay, and what mode was the most challenging? And what mode make you feel most heard? Okay, and also what is your takeaway from this? So now if you have less than 5 people in your breakout room, that's okay, no worries. Some people can take more than one role, can take multiple roles. Because at the end of the day, that we really would like you to be able to do all 3. So you can take multiple roles and go ahead and take a picture of this screenshot as well, so that you'll be able to follow the steps. Okay, so now we're going to leave this slide on for a few more seconds. And Brendan, are we ready to put everybody in the breakout room? So we're going to do a 10-minute practice here.
Yep, we are ready.
Brendan, are we ready? Okay,
Yep,
already.
we're ready.
So let's go ahead and go to your breakout room, and I'll see you back here in 10 minutes. welcome back. Welcome back, everybody. Okay, I'm waiting for everybody. I think it's all coming back here. Excellent. So how did it go? Okay, so let's hear. I'd like you to kind of type in the chat box. Share with us, which listening approach do you think is the easiest, that comes more natural to you, that you feel like, well, you know what, this is what I do every day, so I don't even have to think. This is how I listen. And also, so that's the first question. Go ahead and type, what is the easiest? Okay.
Our responses are primarily facts, gathering the facts, a couple of feelings in there as well, but mostly facts.
Yeah, mostly facts, right? And this is actually very consistent with the US culture. Okay, so when we listen, we tend to be a fairly low context culture in the US. When we listen to people, we tend to focus on the words they're saying. And we listen to the facts, and we try to memorize it, and we're also trying to analyze what they're saying. So that's a typical sort of how we communicate with each other and listening. So that's the easiest. Most of the people said, yes, facts, absolutely. Now, which mode was most difficult? Feels most challenging? You have to really make an effort. Go ahead and put in the chat box.
Yeah, everyone looks like they're agreeing. It's values, a couple of feelings, but primarily values. It was the most difficult.
Yeah, values is most difficult. And we don't always think about it when we listen, right? We don't think that, why did somebody say that? What's important to this person? And what's guiding their behaviors and their actions? What's behind what they're saying? What are some of the things that's not being said? And that is something that is most challenging. And again, in a low context culture, that we tend to not tune into the value as much. Okay, now, so what mode made you feel most heard? If you were the speaker, right? Which way do you feel like you're actually making the connection, that people actually understand where you're coming from? Go ahead and put in the chat box.
So it's kind of a mix between feelings and values we're seeing here.
Ah, very good, very good. So you see, we don't hear the facts as the most important factor, right? Usually it's the feelings and also the values, okay? And so after this practice, this exercise, what is the takeaway, okay? What do you think it's important for you to remember as you go back to work and start interaction with your coworkers and with your team members, with your boss, and even with your neighbors and friends and family? What's the takeaway when it comes to deep listening? Okay, go ahead and put in your chat box.
So we're getting a couple of comments here. Listen to learn, not to respond. Mm-hmm. Listen for more than words. Be present in all senses. I was amazed that because I was partially listening to values, it became easier to identify them. At work with bosses, it seems like the facts would be more important, but often they want their feelings heard too. We really need to pay attention to feelings, although all areas are important.
Yes, thank you. Those are very thoughtful comments. Thank you for that. Thank you, Bernard. What a great summary they provided. I like to think that when we practice deep listening, right, especially those 3 different areas, it's like some areas we're more comfortable with and some areas that we're not used to. And it's like working out. It's like building your muscle, right? And similarly with listening, is that when we are trying to develop some new habits and when we're trying to try to build muscles, and we wanted to make sure that we continue to practice, right? So if I go to the gym and then tell my trainer, well, look, I want to build some muscle in my arms, okay? Because I'm kind of a runner, so my legs are pretty strong, but my upper body is kind of weak. What is my trainer gonna tell me? Well, you have to start lifting weights, right? So then you're gonna start probably by lifting 3-pound weights, and then you do it every day, maybe 10 repetitions, and then you're gonna feel a little bit sore at the beginning, and because it's not something that you're used to do. But then after a week, you do it every day, you pay attention, you're very intentional and mindful about this, and it's not so sore anymore. You become more natural. And then next week, you can start lifting 5-pound weight. And over time, you build this muscle memory, and you become a stronger listener, and you are going to be more effective. And it no longer it's not an effort anymore. It's just naturally that you're listening to those 3 things. All right, well, great practice. Thank you, everybody. Now, we're going to kind of go back to straight talk. Okay, so I am going to actually do a role play demonstration with my friend Agnes. All right, let's give Agnes a hand. I'm going to walk over here. So, Agnes, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Take a deep breath. Whew. Okay, so now we're going to do a role play. And by the way, Agnes doesn't know what's going on. I didn't tell her anything, right? So we're going to do just be yourself, and we're going to talk about how to deliver feedback or tough conversation. So I would like to, let's just pretend that I'm your boss, okay? And I'm gonna give you some feedback. Well, we actually have some props here. So if you can grab a glass of water. Okay, so let's click. All right, cheers. Now, the water is actually not for drinking, okay? It's actually very symbolic. What the water means is if you look at the clear glass here, that we have roughly the same amount of water. So the water symbolizes what each of us have in our mind, that what we're thinking, how we feel, okay? Now, as we have this conversation, that every time I say something to Agnes, I'm gonna pour some water into your glass. And when you say something to me, you're gonna pour some back in my glass. We go like this back and forth. And so at the end of the conversation, you're gonna see how are we doing in our back and forth. Is that a two-way conversation? And that really the water can show us visually. Okay, so you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, let's go. Great. Well, Agnes, do you have a minute that so come into my office, and I'd like to have a chat with you?
Yes, I have a minute.
Okay, great. Well, I'd like to give you some feedback about your presentation last week in front of all the senior executives.
Oh, great.
Okay.
I'd love that feedback.
Okay, very good. So, so first of all, Agnes, I was, as I was listening to your presentation, I thought that you seem a little nervous, okay? You were talking really fast when you were making the presentation, and it's hard for people to really hear what you're saying when you talk so fast. Sometimes the words all kind of jam together, okay? And also, you're not making a lot of eye contact with the audience. So you were kind of a lot of time reading your notes. And so when you're not making eye contact with them, you know what, they're just lost interest, and you're not connecting with you. And so I see people start looking at their phones, and it just kind of, they're not really making a whole lot of connection with you. Well, you know what? Another thing is that, your PowerPoint. Your PowerPoint presentation, it definitely needs some work. Okay. Now, when you some of the PowerPoint presentation, your slides is too busy. There's a lot of tags, so when you're sitting back in the audience, it's just hard to see some of the tags in your PowerPoint. All right, that's about it. All right, well, I'll see you later.
Thanks.
Go ahead, I know it's overflowing. All right. Okay, so Agnes, how are you feeling about?
I feel very attacked and called out, and you didn't give me a chance to say anything. I just felt like you dug into me and didn't allow me to say anything at all.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yes.
Yep. So you feel like you just didn't have a chance to communicate back.
Right, I didn't.
Okay, okay. And do you remember any of the feedback that I gave you?
No.
No?
All I know is that you were not happy with my performance at that presentation. That's all I took from everything you spat at me.
Yes, well, right. Yeah. So if I ask you to do another presentation, would you be willing to volunteer?
What did you say this morning? No way. No way.
No way, there's no chance you're going to do it again, right? All right. Well, obviously, this was not a very effective conversation, right? Yeah.
That's not effective at all.
Not effective at all, absolutely. So let's hear some of the feedback from our participants, okay? So please type in your chat box and tell us what was wrong in this conversation, that I was providing feedback to Agnes, but what didn't go well? And also, what would you suggest that I do differently? Okay, so go ahead and give me some feedback. So go ahead and type in the chat box.
All right, we got quite a few feedback coming in. It was a one-sided conversation. You didn't share your intent. Listen, question mark. No open-ended questions, no positive points cited. Didn't allow Agnes to provide her feedback. Didn't have the opportunity to hear from her. Ask how she felt and ask if there was anything. It was all negative. Pause and let her speak. Allowed feedback, all feedback and no conversation. One way again. Give Agnes a bigger cup.
I know, the cup is too small. Yeah, thank you, Bernard. You're absolutely right. Yeah, this is all one way, right? And I never gave her a chance to speak. All right. What would you suggest that I do differently? Please go ahead and type in the chat box. What can I do to be more effective and to be a better feedback provider?
So ask her how she thought she did. Asking her how she felt the presentation went to start with. For each point, let her respond. After each thought, wait for her to respond. Phrase feedback as suggestions on how to improve those areas and ask her thoughts. Offer positive points to each criticism. So I think, yeah, a lot around allowing her the opportunity to respond and for you to also provide some positive feedback.
Very good. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for those for those feedback and also feed forward, because those are really helpful suggestions. So Agnes, can you give me another chance? Let's try again.
Okay, okay.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you so much. All right. So I'm going to try again to see if I can actually improve this conversation. All right. So let's make sure we have about the same amount of water. All right. So that sounds good. Looks good. Hi, Agnes. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you doing this morning?
Good, good. Is this a good time for us to chat for a few minutes?
No, I want to go to lunch.
Oh,
Yes, it's a perfect time.
All right, thank you, thank you. I wanted to just debrief about your presentation last week.
Okay, I wanted to debrief with you too.
Yeah.
It was my first really big presentation, and I probably didn't do my best. So yes, I wanted to talk to you about it as well.
Great, well, thank you, thank you. So let's have a seat.
Okay.
All right. So Agnes, what do you think went well?
I got FaceTime with the executives.
Mm-hmm.
I also was able to share what it is that we're doing, that we're trying to put out.
Yes.
So I thought that was a plus.
Yes, yes, I agree with you. I actually gotten some really positive feedback from the executives at your presentation. And it was clear that you have put in a lot of effort in this presentation. You handled the questions very well. The Q&A session actually was very positive. Clearly demonstrate your knowledge in this area. This is your expertise. This is your sweet spot. Okay, so the Q&A went very well, and also, I think just the overall, the handout, the preparation was definitely something that was very obvious to everyone.
Oh,
so
thank you.
yeah, very good job. Now, where did you find most challenging in this whole experience?
So, because it was my first really big presentation, I was really nervous because I had a short time frame to turn this project around. I was cramming things into my slides.
Yeah.
And because when I get nervous, I talk really quick, I probably was doing that too.
All right, all right. Well, you know, I was in your shoes, like, you know, years ago when I first, when I made the first presentation to the executives. So I know exactly how you feel, right? But you know, when it comes to being nervous in a presentation, practice is the key, right? And then the more practice, the easier it gets. So, you know, I wanted to apologize that I actually meant to rehearse with you about a week prior to the presentation. And, you know, and you do recall that I was actually called off for the last minute trip to Atlanta. And because there was a crisis with the team over there at the office. So I wasn't able to really give you any feedback or actually practice with you. So I want to apologize for that.
Oh, thank you. That's okay.
Yeah. So now, you know, I think that going forward, there is another opportunity that you can actually make a presentation to the senior executives. What I would make a point to do is that let's schedule a time to practice.
Okay.
Okay. And then the more you practice, the less nervous you're going to be.
That's probably true.
And then you can slow down, and then you'll be able to make more eye contact with the audience. And this is all something that just takes time to practice, but once you practice, then you'll get better. Now, you mentioned PowerPoint, right?
Yes.
All right. You know what? John and in our team, that he's really good with PowerPoint.
Oh, awesome.
So I'm going to ask him to actually support you on this, help you kind of, you know, work on the PowerPoint for the next presentation. Would that be helpful to you?
That's an amazing resource to provide for me. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Very good, very good. And I want to thank you for actually making such a strong effort in this presentation. Okay. So in summary, what would you, is there anything else that I can do to support you?
No, I think this conversation was great. Thank you for making me feel comfortable about where I felt short.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you saying that we were going to rehearse before my next one and that I have a resource to help with my PowerPoint. Everything's great. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much and appreciate it. All right. Thank you, Agnes.
Thank you.
So, so let's kind of reflect on this, right? How did you feel in this conversation?
I felt like it was a two-way conversation and that you weren't just drilling into me all the things that I did wrong, all the things you weren't happy about.
Yeah.
You allowed me to kind of bring forward what I thought I fell short on, and you either confirmed it or you kind of pepped me up and said, hey, you know what, that happens. It comes with practice, it comes with experience. So it was a very comfortable conversation, and I didn't feel negative. I didn't feel any negativity towards me at all.
Okay, excellent. So you do agree to do another presentation?
Yes way.
Okay. Yes way, not no way. All
Yes
right.
way.
Wonderful. Well, I'd love to thank you.
Thank you.
And I want to hear from everyone, the participants, anything else that you have observed that you would like to add. Please put in the chat box. Love to hear from your perspective.
Well, we're getting a lot of great job, Agnes comments. It was a productive conversation. It shared positive feedback, supportive feedback, and suggestions for improvement. A lot of times the person knows when they weren't at their best. Good to ask first and then agree.
Yeah.
Perfect transition into the constructive feedback by asking what she found challenging, acknowledging error in scheduling, and support. Love the question posed. What do you think went well? What did you find most challenging? Great example of positive feedback. I love that you took responsibility for not having prepared her and apologized. Clearly, you slowed down and didn't rush the conversation. I like that you said that you understand how she feels because you have been in the same position before. And ending the conversation with, how else can I support you?
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Well, you have all coached me, right? How to do a better job in providing feedback. So thank you, everyone. And I want to thank Agnes. Appreciate your help.
Thank you.
Big hug.
Big hug.
Thank you so much. So now with that, I'd like to just quickly go over those 3 key questions to do the straight talk, okay? And number 1, what went well? So allow the other person to self-reflect and think about what are some of the positive things that, that come out of this experience. And then what challenges have you experienced? And number 3 is that what would you do differently next time, right? So when you go through those 3 questions and it's less threatening, and it is a tough conversation, but most of the time, like one of you have said in a chat box, that your employee, your team member knows that what went well and what area they can still do better. So if they share that first, it's much easier for you to actually work on some of the development areas and then provide the support you have. So those are the 3 key questions. So those are the top 5 tips for straight talk. Drum roll. Now, number 5 is ask them to self-reflect first, meaning that ask them to empty their glasses. So take a look at, right? This is Agnes's glass, this is mine. And it turned out to be pretty close. So ask the other person to empty their glass first. And then when they empty their glass, then they will have more room to receive some feedback. And if they did not point out all the areas that can be developed, can be improved, then as a leader, as a feedback giver, that I need to provide clear feedback to add to what they have, they didn't say or didn't, perhaps the blind spots. So this will be a very constructive conversation. Now, number 4 is to demonstrate empathy and humility. So show understanding and appreciation for what they have done. Now, when we think about empathy, that we often say that empathy is to put yourself in the other person's shoes, right? But I think that in order to do that, we have to take off our own shoes first. So think about that metaphor and demonstrate empathy and humility and put our own judgment and assumption aside and our own ego aside, and then really put ourselves in their shoes and then act as a partner rather than trying to criticize or put them in the hard spot. Now, number 3 is to be clear and kind so that they know that you have their back and you're there to cheer for them and you're there to support them. You want them to be successful. Number 2 is use feed forward. So feed forward and feedback are the opposite. And they're both important, but there's a big difference. Feedback focus on the past. Feed forward, focus on the future. So when you use feed forward, that you focus on suggestions and things to help the other person become more successful. And so that's when you have a tough conversations with dignity, is to continue to focus more on the feed forward. Okay, now, last one is number 1, inspire greatness. Okay, at the end of the day, that when we provide tough conversations or feedback, our goal is to really inspire the other person to be great. So let's keep all of that in mind and when we give straight talks. Alrighty, so thank you so much, everybody. Do we have any time for questions?
Yeah, we have time for 1 or 2.
Okay, great. Bernard, do we have any questions?
Not yet. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to enter into the chat.
That sounds good. Well, we have about a minute left, so love any questions. And you know, if you think of any questions later, please connect with me on LinkedIn or contact me, and love to have some offline conversations with you. And any other questions before we wrap up?
Yeah, if a person does not identify what was challenging, how do you prompt them to provide more info?
Good question, right? What if somebody was just thinking they're doing great? They couldn't see anything wrong with their performance, and this happens definitely a lot with in the real world. And so, as a leader, that I would go back to the principle of the straight talk, is to say what needs to be said to the right person at the right time at the right place, accurately, respectfully, and clearly. So get all your facts and sit down with the person and think it through about what is your goal and of this conversation and how you're going to say it, and really listen to their perspective and focus on feed forward and be clear about your message. And remember, clear is kind, unclear is unkind. Thank you so much, everybody. Mahalo.